Welcome to A Fine Time, The Nanny Revisited. This is a podcast about The Nanny, where we recap each episode and then discuss, sharing our own unique take on each episode. I'm Bernadette.
And I'm Debbie. Today we're talking about episode 51, Dope Diamond. As usual, we'll start with a brief summary of the episode. Fran met Dr. Jules Kimball, a handsome, single Jewish doctor, at the Hadassah Hoedown, and Sylvia helps her get ready for her date by hiking up her skirt and encouraging her to show some décolletessen. While Fran insists that it's far too soon to know if she and the doctor are compatible, upon his arrival, they melt into a passionate kiss. Sylvia hovers over the Sheffield dinner table, waiting for Fran to return, compelling that they must be having a wonderful time. After Sylvia steps into the kitchen, Fran comes in with big news. Jules proposed. Sylvia faints upon hearing that Fran didn't say yes, and a confrontation ensues. Fran tells her mother that she told Jules she would think about it, but indicates that she's going to say yes. Maxwell chimes in, saying Fran's being sensible and not agreeing to marry someone she just met, and Sylvia makes her displeasure known by pricking him with a fork. When Jules and Fran go ring shopping, he unfortunately absconds with the 5-carat ring. It turns out Jules Kimball is not a doctor, but is a fugitive who has left behind a string of broken-hearted women in their 30s desperate to get married. Fran doesn't understand why she was one of his victims. She blames Sylvia for pushing her to get married, resulting in Fran, Sylvia, and Yetta all going to therapy together. In the end, Fran and Maxwell commiserate over having been told that they're subconsciously avoiding a relationship, completely oblivious to the fact that they are more than literally stuck on each other. Bernadette, do you want to add anything?
Just how against Maxwell was the entire time. He was very displeased.
Oh, yeah. He was, shall we say, jealous.
Yeah, but
Even
not consciously so.
Correct. He denied being jealous repeatedly when Niles like, it's just not fair, is it? And he's like, what I was going to say before my back off butler. Anyway, I won't go too far into that. But yeah, no, he doesn't realize he's being jealous.
Yeah. So we actually begin this episode in the living room.
Yes.
And Maxwell and Brighton are playing chess. And Maxwell, not a very he's a kind of a sore winner in the sense that not a lot of like sportsmanship. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's like, you might as well concede. I have you in 2 moves. You're done. Finish.
Toast.
Ha.
Exactly.
And so of course Niles, who is watching this, tells Maxwell, when it's time to pull the plug on your life support, have the girls do it.
Yeah, go with the girls.
Yeah. Sylvia and Fran actually descend the stairs at this time, and Sylvia's fussing over Fran, and Fran kind of shoos her way. Stop futzing with my skirt. And Maxwell kind of gets in the conversation. Oh, your mother, is she trying to pull it down? She's like, no, it's my mother. She's hiking it up. And he's like, setting the virgin for the big sacrifice. And again, Sylvia kind of comments on the virgin comment by saying it would be if this were 1980.
Right.
And Fran quickly shushes her. And then you have Sylvia doing that phrase you said in the summary. Oh, show some décolletessen.
Yeah, she's mispronouncing a word and just subbing in like delicatessen. But anyway, continue.
And Fran at first is like, I'm not one of those over the hill hussies desperate to, and she cuts off. Oh, maybe I should. And she like adjusts her top to show a little more cleavage.
Correct.
And this is where we find out that she went to the Hadassah Hoedown. That's where she meets this mystery guy who's coming. And Sylvia was kind of like, yeah, she thought she'd meet the man of her dreams at a gay bar. And Fran quickly corrects her. I said Zay bars.
Right.
And I'm going to get you a miracle ear, Ma.
Mm-hmm.
But again, to some extent, Maxwell's kind of in a very teasing mood because he tells Fran, "Oh, you better go. You're not getting any younger." And she replies, "Well, I'm not the one who looks like Lily Munster,"
Right.
hitting towards the hair. And we find out that this guy who's coming, Fran met a week ago.
Mhm.
And of course, as she's going to answer the door, she's like, "Oh, we just met a week ago. I don't even know if we're compatible." And as soon as she opens the door, she and who we find out to be is Jules fall into an embrace, start making out in front of everybody.
Disgustingly so, yes.
Yes, like very obviously, like very theatrically. We learn he is a doctor. And of course, Maxwell quips, "Oh, is that why he's trying to remove her tonsils?"
Right.
And Fran's talking about, like ever since the Beatles, she's always wanted to meet a sexy guy with an English accent,
Yep.
which is again funny to the audience because Maxwell's right there. Um,
Correct.
and and then we Fran's kind of talking to Maxwell like, "Oh, you should have come, there were some nice girls there for you too. Big hair, lots of makeup, tight clothes." And she turns to Jules and explains, "Not my style, but he likes it," or something like that. Again,
Exactly.
very not self-aware.
Yeah.
And so Sylvia is still there fussing over, and she invites Jules over for dinner on Sunday and promises to take the plastic off the couch. And he quips, "Oh, sounds delicious." And Sylvia starts laughing. Fran, not so much. And Sylvia pinches Fran, laugh at his jokes.
Right.
Is there anything you want to add to this scene?
The only thing I want to comment on is, as you recall, Fran had her tonsils out in season 1.
Ah,
So
hmm
Maxwell's comment is, I mean, I take his point, and clearly he is jealous, even if he doesn't realize it.
hmm
But her tonsils are gone, so he'll be searching a really long time.
Yeah, and I think we can kind of see before Fran answers the door, he's taking us very lightly, like teasing, but as soon as he actually sees Jules, I think he feels more threatened.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Would you like to take us to the next scene?
I'd love to. We're in the office, and
Mhm.
it's Cece and Niles and Maxwell are in the office, and Cece's sitting on the couch like she usually is, and she's commenting about how she can't keep her eyes. She's struggling to keep her eyes open. She has to get out, and like Maxwell's totally oblivious to her talking, and he says to her, "Cece, do you believe in love at first sight?" And Cece, that wakes her up. She jumps, "Yes, why?"
Mhm.
Maxwell says, "Miss Fine." "No, why?" She continues.
Mhm.
And Maxwell doesn't even notice that she's like playing both sides of the game.
Mhm.
Um, and he yes, she met a gentleman, and she's like, "Yeah, I mean, yes, 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 yes. I'll stick with yes." And so
Mhm.
Maxwell explains that they spend every waking minute together, and it's just not. And Niles jumps in, "Fair, sir." And Maxwell kind of turns on him. What I was going to say before my back off butler interrupted. She just met the man. It's all happening so fast. And Cece comments, "Well, that's why the lady is a tramp."
Mhm.
Um, Niles gets her back for that by offering coffee, and she says, "Yes, please." So he puts the hot coffee pot, or it looks to me like a tea kettle, a hot tea
Mhm.
kettle, in her hands.
Yeah, when
Um,
she's not looking.
exactly. Um, and so Frank comes in, and because Maxwell wanted to talk to her, and he lets her know that Grace's school called, that she'll be coming home with a head full of chocolate cake. And Fran's like, "Oh, don't worry, that'll come right out. I'll just take her to my mother's Weight Watchers meeting." Um, and instead of like commenting on that, Max was like, "Aren't you disturbed there's a boy in Gracie's class who's pummeling her with food every day?" And Fran's totally nonchalant about it. Boys throw food to relieve sexual tension, unlike girls who just stuff their faces. And then, Cece chimes in, "That's such a fallacy," as she's literally stuffing her face with a giant sandwich.
Mhm.
Um, so, Fran basically transitions the scene and is like, "If you don't need me anymore, Jules is taking me to a matinee." And, you know, um, Max was like, "Oh, the theater. It's not like you get a lot of that here. What are you seeing?" And she, of course, can't remember. Turns out they're going to see the Fantastics. Um, and she comments, about how, so she asks Cece, do you want to meet Jules? Do you want to meet the guy? And Cece is less than nimble with her sentence here and says, oh, Nanny, fine. I'd love to meet the man who's taking you away from Max. And then she realizes as she's saying it, what she's saying. And so she tries to fix it by saying a million shell oil. And like, it's totally awkward and uncomfortable for everyone, which Niles adds to by saying, oh, nice save. So Fran says she'll go get him, that he's, playing chess with Brighton. It's so cute how he lets him win. He's going to make a great father someday. So she leaves, and Cece tries to, regain her position. And she says, wait a minute. If Nanny finds boyfriend is here, who's in the chicken suit at the Padres game? And like, she basically starts eating her words as soon as Fran and Jules come in, and they're again kissing. And Cece comments, oh, he's gorgeous. And Niles, as he usually does, he tries to make her feel better by saying, oh, cheer up. Perhaps he brought a friend for you. And he looks down and whistles as if calling for a dog. Oh, no. And so Fran then introduces them, Cece, MD, and then she offers Cece M&Ms, and Cece takes them, continuing with the idea that women stuff their faces to relieve sexual tension. And so Maxwell, this is one of those instances where Maxwell tries to like get a leg up over Jules. And he's like, oh, well, if I'd known you're going to the theater, I could have gotten you, box seats or whatever. And they start comparing their connections. I know the star. I know the producer. I know the director. I know the theater owner. I talk to God, is how Jules ends it. And Fran says, Jules, put that back in your pants. I can't stand to see two grown men fighting over who has the biggest connection. And she like gives Maxwell a dirty look, and the two of them leave. And that's the scene. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was wondering if you noticed something in the background. You know how Cece was stuffing her face with a sandwich, and then we kind of focus more on Fran and Maxwell as she's trying to remember the name of the show. In the background, Cece wipes her hand on Niles' jacket.
I can't say that I noticed that, but that doesn't surprise me. She'll do that again.
I know, it was so in character. And, usually there's so much going on, especially when taking notes, it's hard to catch everything. But I was like, that's some good character, stuff in the background.
Yeah, they do a really good job of that on the show. Would you like to take us to the dining room?
Yes. So we are in the dining room, and Sylvia is awkwardly standing on Maxwell's right side. And again, he's like, would you like to join us? And she's like, no, no, no. Make it like I'm not even here. And she like grabs a piece of bread, starts eating it. And again, they inquire, we could offer you something. She's like, no, no, no. I had a Yoplait at 10:30. But then she spies a large potato on Gracie's plate.
Such a big potato.
Big potato for such a little girl.
Exactly.
And she uses the fork to spear it, and she she notes that she needs to go to the kitchen because she needs a meat to wash it down with.
Before you continue, did you notice what she was doing with the piece of bread before she noticed the potato?
Aside from eating it?
Yeah, you're right. She starts the scene like near Maxwell, but then she like walks over towards Gracie, and she has that piece of bread, and she like wipes Gracie's plate with it to get the sauce.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, continue.
So, but again, she says a meat to wash it down with.
Right.
And again, so she goes, I believe at this time, into the kitchen.
Yes.
And they start talking about Jules. Brighton likes Jules. And again, Maxwell's not too happy with that. He threw all the games, See how easy it is to bond? And then, Maxwell's kind of we can tell as the audience, he's kind of reassuring himself, like, oh, don't invest too much in it. It's eventually going to end, as all her relationships do. And of course, at this moment, Fran comes in, squealing that Jules asked her to marry him. And she's like, and she kind of walks over to the other side of the room where there's the sideboard and Niles and the food. And she's like, I couldn't even eat. Ooh, is that kielbasa? And
Right.
sweet sour, what's coleslaw or
Cabbage.
cabbage? You know, hit me up. And then she, like her mother, sees the corn on Gracie's plate and says, "Such a big corn for such a little girl," and spears it. And she sits down in her normal seat, which is next to Maxwell. And, of course, Maxwell's like, "You've only known each other for 2 weeks." And Gracie kind of comes in for on Fran's side saying, "Well, I think is it Todd?
Mm-hmm.
If we only knew each other 3 minutes before I got a pudding pack to the eye." Because again, that's the little boy who's been throwing food at her to relieve his sexual tension. Um, but anyway, so Maxwell is like, "So he's a doctor. Is he even a specialist?" And Fran kind of, has a look on her face, like, and it says, "You ain't just whistling Dixie, baby."
Right.
And and as this is unfolding, Sylvia's coming back in to the dining room from the kitchen, and Fran does not see her. So, Fran's telling everybody at the table, "Well, I didn't say yes." And Sylvia like faints.
Mm-hmm.
And and then, you know, she doesn't Fran does not realize. But then I'm not sure if this is the part, well, you might as well get a knife and just stick it straight through me. And this coincides with Gracie sitting back down. So at first, Fran thinks that Gracie has just done an amazing imitation of Sylvia.
Mm-hmm.
Then she like turns around and realizes, "Ma, let go of my ankle."
Right.
And you'd better run. And they kind of start a chase, and Fran asks them, "Did she take off her shoe?" "No, but she's about to hurl a corn." So they
Right.
run into the kitchen, and I've kind of considered this just one
I
continuous
did as
scene.
well. Yeah.
So Fran and Sylvia run into the kitchen, and Fran quickly goes to the sink and takes the little like sprayer, the detachable, sprayer, and like, okay, put the vegetable down and nobody's going to get hurt. And so they kind of call a truce, right, with the corn and the sprayer.
Mm-hmm.
Put it down. And Sylvia's just like, "So, and I just want you to be happy, but what reason? He's a gorgeous, rich doctor." And Fran's like, "Did I mention he's Jewish?" And so again, Sylvia starts this kind of speech like, "I say this, with all the love, but you're a glorified cleaning girl. This could be your last chance." And France explains, "Well, I didn't say no. I said I would think about it." And um, "So have you?" "I did." "I do?" "You may kiss the bride." Um, so essentially, this conversation has led Fran to decide to actually say yes. But after this whole scene with them, Maxwell comes in. And as you mentioned in your summary, he's kind of like, "Yes, I think it's a good idea to hold off on this." And then he like yelps. And Sylvia holds up, I think it's tongs, right?
Yeah, but she doesn't call them a tongue.
Nope. Oh no. Did this, I don't know what she
She
said.
says, "I'm sorry. Did this fork accidentally puncture
Yeah.
your tuchus?"
Yep. I had the puncture your took us, but I didn't know what
Yeah, she called it a fork, which
Okay.
to me it's like it's a tongue, it's or a small pitchfork. Not sure. Um,
Yes, you're right. It was more like a pitchfork. So yeah. Do you have anything to add to that scene?
I would say ow on Maxwell's behalf because that looks
Yeah.
like it would hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And the only other thing I'll comment on is when Fran and Sylvia are in the kitchen, the dialogue is Sylvia says to her, "All right, help me to understand. Which
Mm-hmm.
was the biggest turnoff? The fact that Jules was gorgeous, rich, or a doctor?"
Mm-hmm.
And then Fran throws in that he was Jewish, and then they have the conversation that you summarized. Um, the only other thing I'll add to it is that Fran's the one who says, "Ma, you may kiss the bride," and the two of them start going wah 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 wah.
Mm-hmm.
So they seem very happy about Fran's decision, and yeah, that's all I wanted to add. So,
Okay.
shall I take us to the jewelry store?
Yes.
So, in the next scene, so we're in scene 4, Fran and Jules walk into what looks like a very high class, expensive jewelry store. And we hear Jules telling her, "Sweetheart, I want you to have the most beautiful engagement ring money can buy." And Fran says, "Oh, Julesy, I don't know if I can go through with this." And she sounds very hesitant. And he's like, "Getting married?" And she says, "No, buying retail." And she, explains to him that I'm a simple girl with simple tastes. I just want a simple ring. And meanwhile, they've like walked all the way into the store and they're up near one of the jewelry cases. And she's like that one. And the woman behind the counter says, "Ma'am, that is a crystal ashtray." And Fran's
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, I was talking about the shape, kind of like the shape of that crystal pineapple over there." And the woman's like, "Oh no, that's a ring." She's like, "Okay, whip it out, honey."
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so Jules starts, saying, "We don't want to see anything less than 5 carats." And Fran's like, "5 carats? What's up, Doc?" And so the woman behind the counter takes out a ring and says, "This one is 5.2." And she polishes it. "We could take off 10%. That would make the price $50,000. And Fran's like, a haggler. Now she's speaking my language. Offer her 10. And so they look at the ring and, Jules comments that it's a little cloudy. It doesn't sparkle. Fran's like, "Oh, I like the one we saw at Van Cleef and Hormel better." Um, and the woman basically says, "Take it outside in the sun, it'll blind you, you sir." And he said he takes her up on her suggestion and says, "I shall leave you my little jewel," and I think taps Fran's nose, and he walks out to ostensibly look at the ring in the sunlight. And the woman tries to make conversation with Fran. "So when's the big event?" Fran's like, "Well, if he buys this ring, he could get lucky in just a few." "Oh, you mean the wedding date?" Actually, we haven't talked about setting a date yet. And like at this point, they start to wonder where he is. Um, "Where's your fiance?" And Fran's like, "Oh, he, probably went to put money in the meter." "Oh no, we don't have a car." And she like tried to like go find him, and the woman behind the counter is like, "Guard, hold her, like she can't go anywhere." And Fran's
Mm-hmm.
like, "Jules, how could you do this? He's a doctor. He didn't need the money. Hillary's health plan didn't go through."
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the scene ends. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, she does also instruct someone to call the police.
Oh
Not
yeah.
not Fran, but the sales associate. Um, so then the next scene we pick up where Fran is in the store but sitting in a chair, and there's like a detective kind of questioning her, and she's like just so distraught over everything, and she,
Well,
still
wouldn't you
trying
be?
to come, yeah, and she's still trying to come to grips, like, because she's like, he wanted my parents to move in. Wait, that should have, in retrospect, that should have been a hint.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the detectives explaining to her, they've been looking for Jules Kimball for years, and he's not a doctor. Wait, so he lanced my mom's boil for fun? And again, Maxwell is there with Fran. but he has a little bit, in his voice where like I'd hate to say I told you so, but I never trusted him from this far. I can spot a con man, you know, from a
A
mile
mile
away.
away.
And Fran's like, ha, says the man who paid me time and a half to work on Hebrew National Day.
Exactly.
And so, but she goes back to kind of wallowing. Why me? Why me? And again, the detective saying, well, Jules has, a history of targeting women in their 30s who are single, desperate, you know. And again, Fran's like, again, why me?
Right.
So, do you have anything to add to that?
I'll just say that the detective said he usually preys on women over 30, single, lonely, desperate. And then Fran, as you said, is like I said, like, why me?
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's all I want to, that's all I want to add. Um, so we're then in the living room back at the Sheffield home. Um, and Maxwell is trying to cheer Fran up and says, cheer up. This isn't the stupidest thing you've ever done. And she's like, I guess that's true. The stupidest thing I ever did was Windexing your Monet, or should I say your moan.
Mm-hmm.
And as they're sitting on the couch, Niles comes in with a little present. Miss Fine, this came for you. Oh, an engagement present. How humiliating. Just put it upstairs with the rest of them.
Mm-hmm.
Query what the polite uh, etiquette thing is to do when you get engagement presents and the engagement ends. I think you're supposed to send them back. I'm not sure. Um, anyway, at this point, the doorbell rings and in rushes Sylvia. Where is she? Where's my baby? I rushed over as soon as they finished my hair. And Fran whines, Mommy. And Sylvia, does the whole mama bear thing. I just hope the police find that creep before I do. My Francine is not desperate. She can have any man she wants. And Fran takes some comfort from this and starts going to get a piece of Godiva chocolate or something. And Sylvia stops her and hits the chocolate out of her hand, but not forever. So don't let yourself go. And Fran turns on her mom. Ma, this is all your fault. Ever since I was a little girl, she starts saying to Maxwell, she was always pushing me to get married. And Sylvia insists, I never pushed. As she literally pushes Fran into Maxwell.
Mm-hmm.
And Fran continues to explain to Maxwell her background that when I was a little girl, every affair we went to, she'd throw the centerpiece at me and say, here, think fast.
Mm-hmm.
And Maxwell's like, I'm sure your mother only meant well. And poor Niles, who's kind of been ignoring, says, yeah, they always do. Like when they stop you from pursuing a singing career to follow in your father's footsteps as a subservient slave. And everyone kind of looks at him and he tries to salvage the moment by saying, and loving every minute of it, sir.
Mm-hmm.
And so Maxwell, tries to take Fran's side and says, now, Sylvia, if truth be told, I think you were more gung-ho about this marriage than Miss, and before you can finish saying Miss Fine's name, Sylvia interrupts with, damn, I broke my nail. It was clear that I think he also might have shouted again because she was, poking him hardly, with her nail and before broke it. Anyway, so Maxwell says, I'm going to leave you guys alone.
Mm-hmm.
And so he leaves and Sylvia gives Fran this dirty look and says, I can't believe I lost my figure for the likes of you. And Fran comes back with, you lost your figure for the likes of Winchell's mom. And Sylvia explains, I have low blood sugar. The doctor prescribed donuts. And who prescribed ice cream floats? Dr. Pepper. And so they get interrupted by Gracie walking down the stairs saying that, your voice carries. Sorry, I can hear you all the way upstairs. And Fran's like, oh, her voice carries. Go back upstairs. And Gracie, as she's getting ready to leave to go back upstairs, says, you have some major issues with your mother stemming from your failure to live up to her expectations. And Fran's like, no, come back. And she's like, I can't believe how advanced she is. When I was her age, I was, hanging bagels from my ears, pretending I was Princess Leia. And Gracie gives them her pseudo professional opinion that I think you need some therapy. And Fran and Sylvie have the exact same reaction. No, she'll never change.
Mm-hmm.
And Gracie tries to help them come up with a therapist who would meet their needs. Gracie's doctor turns out is too cerebral. Dr. Lerman, his couch is too ishy. And, Sylvia says, forget it, sweetheart. I'm not the type of person that can lie on a couch and cry and scream about how miserable I am. And Fran's like, please, put a lean cuisine in your lap and 400 almond joy wrappers under the cushions and you'd be home. So, needless to say, they're going to take Gracie's advice.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything you want to add?
Nope.
All right. Would you take us to the therapist's office, please?
Yes. So we're in the therapist office. And of course, the therapist is inquiring how she can help them. And Fran, we first pan to Fran. And she's explaining my mother has an obsession with me getting married.
Mm-hmm.
And then we pan to Sylvia. Well, my daughter has a delusion of me being obsessed.
That I have an obsession. Yes.
Yeah. And then we pan once more. And there's Grandma Yetta. And she says, they brought me here and I don't know how to get home.
I came because they brought me and I don't know how to get home from here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so again, Sylvia's kind of saying to Fran, for $100 an hour, you would think that they would offer coffee and Nilla wafers.
Right.
And Fran, of course, is like trying to brush her off. You look like a veal ashes. Is that what she says?
Veal cutlet.
Sorry, my handwriting. Okay,
It's
anyway.
fine.
And then they start kind of having a verbal battle. This is your fault. Um, you know, Fran's saying this, I believe she starts it off to Sylvia, right? This is all your fault. You were always pushing. And then Sylvia is like scoffing, daughters always blame their mothers. But then, of course, she immediately turns to Grandma Yetta and, this is your fault. You always pushed for me to have children. And all they do is bring heartache. And Yetta kind of was agrees and like, ha, payback time.
That's right, Cookie. It's payback time.
Yep, she's kind of pleased with herself.
Mm-hmm.
And the 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 therapist was kind of you know zoned out, but well, she mentions that it seems like you're harboring a lot of hostility. And you know Grandma Yetta starts to say, that, well, don't push her into marriage, let her get married when she wants to. you know it's we
Not
don't
just
want her to, yeah, it's not just getting married because the seltzer man knocked you up like I heard people do.
right.
So very clearly she was knocked up by the seltzer man.
According
And
to this iteration of her history,
yeah.
yes.
And so Sylvia kind of pauses and contemplates, is that why I like egg cream so much? And again, the therapist is kind of zoned out at this point. Um, but they all reassure her, oh no, it's fine, it happens. People have told us our voices are very soothing.
Correct.
And this is when Sylvia is like, I'm sorry, I just want you to live a full life. And Fran's saying, well, I do want to get married someday, but if it doesn't happen, that doesn't mean that my life is worthless, right? Sylvia doesn't say anything. Fran's kind of like not actually crying, but kind of wiping her eyes. Right? Right? And so finally, yes. And then Yetta makes a comment, back in her day, you didn't air all your dirty laundry out in the public. Welcome to the 80s.
Exactly.
So I thought the addition of Grandma Yetta in the scene was very funny.
I agree.
Is there anything you want to add to it?
Nope.
Okay, take us to the last scene.
All right. So Brighton, so we're now in the living room and Brighton is sitting in front of a chessboard. And, Fran comes in and he tells her, whatever you do, don't let Gracie touch this board. And Fran's like, oh, B, you finally beat your father. And she's really excited for him. And in her exuberance, she manages to screw up the chessboard by dropping her purse on it. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
Gracie, look what you did. Um, Gracie, what did you do? Or something like that. And so she tries to fix it. Um, and so Gracie says to her, I have to break up with Todd. I'm afraid of getting hurt. And Fran's like, oh, it's your first crush. Why don't you just enjoy it? And Gracie's like, no, Fran, I'm afraid of getting hurt. Those juice boxes are hard. And Fran totally changes tune. All right, so you picked the wrong guy. No biggie. Just move on with your life, okay? And Gracie leaves. And Fran mutters to herself, I hope he ends up in Attica with a cellmate that finds him attractive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so Maxwell comes in and um, she starts telling him about how successful therapy was. My mother's thrilled. She finally figured out why she has an unnatural attachment to egg creams. The Chinese food we're blaming on the man who used to press Grandma Yetta's blouses. And so then Brighton is there and he does exactly what his dad did in the first scene. Concede, Dad. You'll see I've got you in 2 moves. You're done. Finished. Toast. Ha! And Maxwell leans over and very easily moves one piece and says, checkmate. What? What happened to this board? And Fran, very quick on her feet, comes up with the answer. Oh, don't leave 2 queens alone together. They'll redecorate.
Mm-hmm.
And Brighton kind of just like puts his hand to his temple and walks out pained. And so Fran and Maxwell are left to put away the chessboard. And Fran sort of reflecting on it and says, I never should have blamed my mother anyway. I should have known that guy was out of my league. And Maxwell, comes to her defense and was like, don't be so hard on yourself. He duped you. And she's like, I was right for the duping. Once a girl's exposed to a guy like you, so debonair and classy, there's just no going back. And Maxwell's like, well, I have been known to turn a few heads. And Fran's like, please, Miss Babcock needs an exorcist. So they go and they're like walking around. They put the chessboard away. And she says, you want to hear something funny? The therapist said I was subconsciously avoiding a relationship. And he's like, oh, please, with whom? And she's like, I know. And she adds, I mean, believe me, if there were a guy out there who was single, successful, attractive, I'd smell him a mile away. What is that, Aramis? And like, because she clearly had just smelled him. And he's like, yes. Gracie's therapist said the same thing to me. And she's like, well, you. And he's like, no, trust me, Miss Fine. If there was a woman who loved my children, could make me laugh, and I found attractive, I'd never let her get away. Meanwhile, he's like put his arm around her shoulders. And then like they are about to part, and she says, oh, hang on a second. We're stuck on each other, because his like cuff link or something got caught in her hair.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we end.
Indeed.
Is there anything you want to talk about thematically before we get into our shticks?
Not particularly. How about you?
Well, I guess I briefly want to comment on a little bit more on the therapy scene where Fran, or maybe it's bigger than the therapy scene. It's clear from this episode, and we'll see more of this as the series continues, that Sylvia has been pushing Fran to get married, right? Mm-hmm. And Sylvia's view of Fran's life as potentially not being a full life or not having meaning or being worthless if she doesn't get married, that seems very dated to me.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least I hope it is.
Yeah, I feel like there's still some strands of it, in society, but yeah, more so back then, I would think.
Yeah.
I think it's more commonplace for people to understand that not everybody's going to follow the traditional kind of thing.
Right. Not to go too far into future fun, but just as we're talking about this, I'm thinking about there's an episode where Sylvia makes a comment about how she's been preparing for Fran's wedding from the moment her egg had a yolk sac, like something that Sylvia has been planning for since before Fran was born. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. I guess that's all I'll say.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite fashion you'd like to talk about?
So I would say of the outfits this episode for Fran, I would say my favorite one is at the end when she walks in with the red coat and the navy polka dot dress. Well, it's
Mhm.
like a two-piece, I think, when you look closer. Um,
That's my favorite too.
okay, yay! Yeah, and just so the audience knows, the first scene where Freya is coming down, getting ready for that date, she's wearing like a strawberry two-piece like dress thing. Because at first I thought it was just a solid dress, but then like she moves her arms and you can tell then it's a two-piece.
Mhm.
That was an interesting choice for a date.
I didn't realize they were strawberries. I thought they were hearts.
Oh, I thought they were strawberries because then around the collar there was like the green stuff.
That makes sense. Yeah. So for our listeners who haven't seen the episode in a while, she's wearing, as Bernadette pointed out, a two piece. It's black, like a black base, and then they're either hearts or strawberries, depending on how you see them. And then at the top of the blouse, like it has like a scoop neck. There's like a green collar, and then the skirt has a green hem to match, so it like balances that way.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a fringy, like at the collar, the green.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Um, I also kind of liked that outfit until you thought they were strawberries, but um,
I think it would be cute for like a summer picnic or
it's
something.
long sleeves.
Well, okay. But
Fall
it
picnic.
did, yeah, sure. An indoor picnic.
Okay.
Like I'm not saying it's bad, it's just surprising for a date.
See, that's probably why I thought they were hearts because, like, you know, subtly saying like we're on a date, we should fall in love, like the heart. That
Hmm.
that's probably why I thought they were hearts. But
Yeah,
anyway,
I'm pretty sure it's strawberries.
okay. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, we've seen her wear other fruit and vegetable themed outfits before. So,
Yes.
um, yeah, I actually kind of liked her date night attire. Um, what did you think of what she wore to go ring shopping?
Is that the colorful dress?
The
Two piece?
very colorful suit.
Yeah.
So
I
it's
personally was not a fan.
yeah, me neither.
Okay.
So for our audience, she's again wearing a suit, and it has like the skirt sort of has like circles, like half circles that are like facing each other. And there's blue and green and I think red and orange and yellow, and the whole suit has these like curved lines as if they were parts of circles. They don't they don't line up to like
Hmm.
form a shape, as far as I can tell. And then she's wearing a black turtleneck. Um, I don't know, but I guess if I was in Fran's shoes, I probably would have worn something white because, like, you know, getting married, like, people imagine the white dress to go down the aisle. Like, I'd start trying to channel that if I was engaged instead of very bright, um, angry looking suit patterns.
Hmm.
That's just me.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I wasn't particularly a fan of that. Any other fashion you wanted to discuss?
Yeah, I actually wanted to talk about something Sylvia wore.
Okay.
Um, so in therapy, Sylvia, I actually liked what she was wearing. She was also wearing a two-piece suit. It was black with like pink cutouts, I think. I just once Fran got the cracker crumbs off her and she no longer looked like a veal cutlet, I actually rather liked what she was wearing.
Hmm.
So I feel like we very rarely get to comment on what Sylvia's wearing in a positive light. So felt like I needed to do so.
Yeah.
Um, do you have any other outfits you want to talk about?
Nope.
All right. Shall we jump to our notable New Yorker friends?
Yes. Um, so I wanted to ask you the
Sure.
Hadassah hoedown.
Oh, uh,
No, if you have that separate.
I have that under Yiddishakov.
Okay.
So,
Then I'll move on.
okay, thank you.
Um, Zabar's?
Zabar's is actually a real place. It's actually quite famous. From their webpage, I pulled their summary, and I quote: "Zabar's has to be experienced in person to truly be understood. You have to see the crowds, hear the banter of our sales help, smell the croissants baking, admire the rich brown hues of our coffee, sample cheese from every corner of the world, enjoy the beauty of hand sliced Nova, walk upstairs and see the largest selection of imported copper cookware anywhere. It really is a one of a kind adventure." End quote.
There you go.
For those of you who are not in New York and don't plan to be, you can also order from their webpage.
Huh.
So,
Yeah. Miracle Ear is, I'm assuming, a hearing aid.
yes, I didn't look it up, but side
Contact.
note,
Yeah.
side note, we'd already heard about a different relative who had a miracle ear, Fran's aunt who lives in Philly.
Hmm.
That was the episode for with the trash man,
Okay.
where Fran was pretending to be Cece, and yeah, she was told, "Oh, we're opening in Philadelphia," and she's like, "Oh, that's where my whoever with the miracle ear lives." And then she, of course, couldn't remember it was Philly, and she's like, "Now's like, would you like some cream cheese?" And she's like, "Oh, we open in Kraft." Sorry, that was way too long of a tangent. Continue.
Okay. Lily Munster.
The matriarch from the Munster family.
Yay. Yet another reference to the Munsters.
Yes, and according to our friends at Wikipedia, she is I believe, the only main character on that show who was not in the pilot.
Oh, really? Huh.
She appeared in the second episode.
The Beatles. Need I say more?
Nope.
Okay. We've got that. Let's see here. Do you think this is out of curiosity that I just now thought of, and probably it has no significance. Do you think the name Jules has any significance to this plot line?
He's a jewel thief.
Uh,
That was what I thought.
I thought of Jules Verne, the author, and I was like, but that has no connection. So never mind. Now when we're like talking about in the scene where Maxwell's inquiring about whether Cece believes in love at first sight, later they talk about, how quickly Fran's gotten with this guy and that's why the lady is a tramp.
I didn't think of that as a reference until you just said that.
Because
that's a song.
Obviously, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
According to our friends at Google, sung by Frank Sinatra, and sometimes features Ella Fitzgerald.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, actually, I take it back. Hold on. Sorry. This is what happens when you do research on the fly. According to our friends at Wikipedia, "The Lady is a Tramp" is a show tune from the 1937 musical Babes in Arms by Rodgers and Hart. It was used to introduce, it was introduced by child star Mitzi Green. It is a spoof of New York high society and its strict etiquette and phony social pretensions.
Interesting.
So, also appears in the film version of Babes in Arms.
Mm-hmm.
Continue. Sorry.
No, that's good. And whenever Fran starts listing like Formula 409,
that's a multi-surface cleaner, according to Formula409.com.
Yeah, Comet.
A family of cleaning products.
Yep, not the interstellar body.
Correct.
Whatever.
According to CometCleaner.com.
Did she say one more before the Fantastics?
Lysol.
Okay.
Which is a disinfectant.
Place. Yeah.
According to Lysol.com.
So the Fantastics.
So according to our friends at Wikipedia, the Fantastics is a musical that whose initial off-Broadway run lasted 42 years. Wow. It's apparently based loosely on the 1849 play The Romancers, which is originally, I believe, in French, but I'm going to go with the English pronunciation so I don't sound stupid.
Okay. Fair.
Thank you. I tried.
Shell oil. Maximilian Shell oil.
I
According to
didn't look that one up, but yes.
it's an oil company. Padres.
That one I realized as we were doing it that I did not catch. The Padres, they're a baseball team. Let's see. They are the San Diego Padres, according to MLB.com,
There we go.
which seems like an odd reference since they're in New York.
Yeah.
Just saying. I mean, the New York baseball teams are the Yankees and the Mets.
Yeah. I also I'm not very knowledgeable, but I also thought that was odd. I was like,
Yeah, we have
right?
another one. We have another one later in this episode that is also peculiar.
Mm-hmm.
So
Hillary's health plan.
I should have included that. I put that in our 90s nostalgia, but
Okay.
we can talk about it now, or we can talk about it then.
Yeah, we can save it if you want. That's
Okay.
fine. Do you have anything?
I do. Okay, so in the jewelry store, Fran references Van Cleef and Hormel,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is actually supposed to be a reference to Van Cleef and Arpels, which is a boutique jeweler whose, and I quote, engagement rings are a reflection of the Maison's high jewelry savoir-faire. Savoir-faire. See, this is why I don't try to read languages I don't speak. That's according to their webpage about engagement rings. The other one that I kind of hinted at before that I thought was sort of misplaced is the reference to Winchell's. Winchell's is apparently a reference to the Winchell's Donut House, which is headquartered in California. It is the largest donut chain on the West Coast.
Huh. So maybe we had a West Coast writer for this episode.
I think so. But yeah, so there are just a couple of different things that didn't fit in New York. Just to close the loop on Winchell's, according to their website, their donuts feature top-grade fruit filling, aromatic spices such as cinnamon and nutmeg, bittersweet chocolate frosting, and pure vegetable oil. I did also look on their webpage to see if there were any in New York, and there weren't. Okay. So they're like
alternate universe where we're on the West Coast.
Apparently. Dr. Pepper. It's a carbonated soft drink that was originally created in the 1880s in Waco, Texas, by the pharmacist Charles Alderton. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia. There's a reference to Princess Leia, a fictional very well-known fictional character from Star Wars, who is portrayed by Carrie Fisher. That's according also to our friends at Wikipedia. There was a reference to Attica, which is a correctional facility in upstate New York. It's in Attica, New York, just to be specific. It was opened in 1931 and is managed by the New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision. It is a maximum security prison. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia. And then I think I'm out. Okay. There weren't as many this week.
Yeah. Well, Aramis, I'm assuming, is a men's fragrance.
Yeah.
It's through S.J. Lauder.
Excellent.
Kind of an indirect reference. Miss Babcock needs an exorcist. I mean, the famous scene for that from The Exorcist with the head turning.
Yep. And the pea soup, is it?
Yep. Okay. Shall we go on to Yiddishkeit?
I would love to. We actually have a couple different things to talk about this week. So in the first scene, there's futzing. And by the way, you pronounced that perfectly, by the way.
Thank you.
So Sylvia was futzing with Fran's skirt. She was basically fiddling with it. She was toying with it. So you asked about the Hadassah hoedown. I can't speak about the hoedown specifically, but Hadassah is the Women's Zionist Organization of America, which, according to their website, was founded before Israel was a state and before women could vote. It now has 300,000 members and focuses on, and I quote, advancing women's health, supporting a strong Israel, and instilling Jewish values in future generations. In the kitchen scene, Sylvia poked or stabbed, depending how you want to phrase it, Maxwell's behind with the tongue, pitchfork, fork. She stabbed his tuchus, that's his butt. It's a more colorful way to refer to anatomy. In the jewelry store, Fran comments about how after Maxwell says he could see a con artist a mile away, she's like, this guy who paid me time and a half to work on Hebrew National Day. So Hebrew National is a very famous kosher brand of hot dogs. According to, I believe this, yes, according to myjewishlearning.com, they did a whole, their affiliate, the Nasher, did a whole thing on the history of kosher hot dogs. And so apparently in 1905, Theodore Cranen founded the Hebrew National Kosher Sausage Factory in the Lower East Side, which is in New York. Kosher hot dogs became very popular amongst Jews and Gentiles alike because not only did they taste good, but because they were associated with higher food safety standards. So think about the jungle, and that is not what you would find in a kosher hot dog. Also,
that took me back to high school, that reference to the jungle.
I can't help myself. Upton Sinclair, right?
Yep, Upton Sinclair.
Excellent. For some reason, I was struggling to remember his name. And the last thing I'll comment on about hot dogs is apparently July is National Hot Dog Month. So happy National Hot Dog Month. I have a bunch of veggie hot dogs waiting for me. And then the last thing, I think we've talked about this at length before, and we'll discuss it again in the future, probably at more length. Sylvia's love of Chinese food. I don't think it's really blamed on the man who pressed Grandma Yetta's blouses. It's a cultural thing. Jews and Chinese food. Chinese restaurants tended to be open on days that most other things were closed, such as Christmas and Sundays. So Jews who were not celebrating the Christian Sabbath could go there. They don't mix meat and dairy typically. Food tends to be cut like if there's meat involved, it tends to be cut very, very small. And so like if it's small enough that you can't, like if it's half the size of an olive, I think is the rule, it doesn't count as like a knowing violation, or it doesn't count as a violation. And there's a whole like Mishnah, there's a whole like thing about like what happens, if you drop a little bit of like milk in a meat stew, do you have to throw it all out? The answer is typically no. It's a question of degrees and intentionality. Anyway, I should study these in more detail before I start, giving a Devar Torah on them. But anyway, the point was that Jews and Chinese food, we go together. So that's all I had. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Excellent. 90s nostalgia.
Yes. I'll let you go first.
All right. Old cars.
Yes.
You knew I was going to say that.
Yes.
Everyone who listens knew I was going to say that.
Mark
Go ahead.
that on your bingo card.
Exactly.
I was thinking, I feel like there would be better security these days, like probably like if it was a really high-end store, potentially even like if they know that there's this guy who goes around stealing things, I would think there might be some facial recognition software or
interesting.
Something more
than here. Take it outside.
Yeah.
It's interesting that that's what you jumped to. I jumped to $50,000 for a 5-carat diamond ring. Sounded like nothing. Sorry, I shouldn't say it like that. Sounded totally out of date. I did a quick Google for the cost of a 5-carat diamond ring, and the ads at the top of my search results show $147,000 was one option, $96,000 and change. So like $50,000 would be a bargain today for,
Wow. Yeah.
for a 5 carat ring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
I feel like the whole thing with jewels too, like nowadays, you would do a Google search or like a social media search of him, right? You wouldn't take it just face value. Oh, you're a doctor?
True. But I mean, in this day and age, people get catfished through online dating. So,
Yes, that's true.
um, did you notice in the second scene in the office, or I should say the second scene of the episode where they're in the office, Maxwell had his laptop on the desk?
Oh, I didn't pay too close attention. I'm sure
It
it was like
it was like basically, yeah, it was a brick. It was very thick. It was very clunky. Um, on the comment of the Hadassah hoedown, it
Mhm.
sounds to me like that was a dance. I'm not really sure if anyone does dances like that anymore. I know there's the like matzo ball, but that seems I don't know if that's continued since the pandemic, but to me it
Mhm.
seems kind of old fashioned to like meet someone at a dance.
Mhm.
Do you want to talk about Hillary's health plan?
I'll let you.
So, in short, Hillary Clinton was the first lady at the time, and she was tasked with trying to reform the healthcare system. It did not succeed. Um, so, yeah, I think
Here we are.
here we are. Yeah, Obamacare passed in 2010, I think. So, took another 16 years,
Yeah.
17 years.
Then kind of a little bit gutted.
Yeah,
So, anyway, America still does not have great health care.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Um, did you have anything else?
I don't believe so. So, how about some future fun?
I would love to. Okay. So I have a number of them. Let's see. Um, so I'll start with something silly. Um, you made a big deal about Sylvia commenting after she stole the such a big potato for such a little girl from Gracie, about how she needed to have a meat to wash this down with.
Mhm.
In about 6 weeks, um, she is she received some distressing news while in the Sheffield home, and she's asked, "Can we get you anything? Are you sure we can't get you anything?" And she says, "No, nothing, nothing. Maybe lunch." And as Niles is walking away, she shouts, "No fish!" So
Mhm.
she always feels entitled to food at the Sheffield home.
Mhm.
Um, I've kind of indicated that, during the therapy scene, we learned that Grandma Yetta got knocked up by the Seltzer Man, which
Mhm.
is why they had to get married. We learn a very different history about Yetta in season 6 in the episode Yetta's Letters. We learned that she came over from the old country to meet her betrothed in America, only to fall in love with a waiter on the ship on the way over, and then she ends up, marrying Fran's grandfather. Um, so not getting knocked up by the Seltzer Man. So there's that. Um, let's see. Um, Fran actually begins seeing a therapist of her own, Dr. Miller, in season 4 after accidentally, unknowingly dating her cousin.
Ooh.
Um, yeah. So there's that's in the episode Kissing Cousins. And she sees Dr. Miller uh, basically through season 5. Let's see. Um, Fran has at least 5 more proposals from at least 3 different suitors ahead of her, most of which she does accept, only one of which results in marriage. I won't say to whom or under what circumstances. Um, and then finally, after Fran gets married, her parents do briefly move in with her and her husband after Aunt Frida, who we will meet, I believe, next week, bought their building and threw them out. All
Wow,
because,
Aunt Frida. Man.
yeah. Um, in her defense, it was because of uh, a note included in her wedding invitation. So
Oh.
basically, she was told she was invited to come but not to sing,
Oh.
and so she took great offense to that.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a lot of fun ahead of us. And yeah, I look forward to continuing on with you, with all of you. I believe then it's time to rate the episode.
Yes, and it's your turn first.
Oh, I hate it when it's my turn. I like this episode. This is one of those episodes that, like, if you said to me, "Oh, what happens on Dope Diamond?" I could give you a quick summary. Probably not as witty as the summary we started with, but I could. I know this episode. I like this episode. I think it's enjoyable. I do feel bad for Fran, but I like the revelations that we get through the therapy. I like the conversation with Maxwell. I like that Maxwell is jealous, even if he doesn't realize he's being jealous. I'm gonna give it a 5 because I like it. So yeah. How about you?
Oh. I think I will give it a 4.
Con?
Um, so there was a lot more in this episode talking about like food and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Several comments about weight and everything like that. Wasn't a huge fan of the whole like subplot with like the boy literally throwing food at Gracie and her getting hurt. Um,
Fair.
and I was a little disappointed that they didn't catch Jules, that he kind of got off away with things. Now I agree with you. I like um the like the therapy and I scene, and I like Maxwell and Fran again continuing their oblivious uh pining kind of
Their
thing.
interactions, like,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, but it's not my favorite episode. Um
That's fair.
I will, as a side note, the title of this episode, I only after the fact realized why it was called Dope Diamond, because I originally took it as in cool, like the nice
Mhm.
definition of dope.
Yeah, I think the nice definition of dope probably
Like, this is a
postdates this
really cool
episode.
diamond. But yeah, so a 4 for me.
That's fine. We don't have to agree on all the episodes.
I already agreed with you with the one that counted, right? We
Yes,
saved our friendship.
yes, you did. That was the pen pal. Yeah.
hmm
So it's fine. We can be totally apart on like so many others. There are a few other episodes coming up this season
hmm
that I expect you will also rate with a 5.
Okay.
And I hope you do. I won't tell you which episodes they are. That would be no
Okay.
fun. Um, but no, there to me, like season 3, I think is the show has totally like hit its stride. It knows what it's like. The writers know what they're doing. They know where they're going with it. Um, it's like it's matured, I guess.
hmm
Um, and so we have a lot of really good things ahead of us.
Yay.
So, all right. Well, that's all we have for you today. We hope you had a fine time with us as we revisited The Nanny. Join us next week when we'll be discussing episode 52, A Fine Family Feud.
If you'd like to reach us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at Nanny Revisited. You can also send us email at afinetimenannyrevisited@gmail.com. Have a great week.